move on. Jonathan Fahey joins us now. He's a former federal prosecutor, former acting ICE director under President Trump as well. Jonathan, great to have you back with us, sir.
Thanks for having me, and glad you're back.
I am glad to be back, Jonathan. So what did you make of the guilty conviction for Hunter Biden, and what isn't the media talking about here? What is Nicole Wallace leaving out?
Yeah, this little game she's playing is really annoying. But this conviction, I have to say, I was somewhat surprised, not because of the merits of it. And, I was thinking about it, a lot. And it's like, well, the case was overwhelming on the merits, but you never knew how a jury would react to Hunter Biden. But he was clearly guilty of this offense. And the Democrats that are always in favor of these gun crimes and gun charges apparently aren't anymore. But Nicole Wallace is, they're saying, conspiracy theories and all these other things. But I think the truth of it is, initially the Department of Justice did not want to charge him, and it wasn't until these whistleblowers came forward and he got charged, and they tried to give him a sweetheart deal where he wasn't going to have any consequences at all, which is really the theme of his entire adult life. And the amazing thing is, when he was going to have this sweetheart deal, he was not even going to be required to cooperate. And ask any federal prosecutor, when you have somebody who's pleading guilty, especially when you're giving them a really good deal, you'd have them cooperate against other people involved in what they were doing. So she's trying to, act like, oh, everyone's crazy. But the truth is, so much of what came out in this trial, particularly the laptop, shows how bad our mainstream media is, because they were mocking anyone that said that was real 4 years ago, and it turned out to be real, and they don't even acknowledge it now. But it really is a distraction in the sense that, yes, he's guilty of these offenses, but they're trying to make it seem like this is the only thing he did, and he's really just a victim, a drug addict, and, he should be felt sorry for. But they neglect all of the other things that he's involved with the tax crimes. And also, there's no curiosity from the mainstream media as to how somebody that does crack every 20 minutes is able to make millions and millions of dollars. It should seem at least odd to them that they may want to further, there might be some further inquiry needed, but it's like, that's just totally normal. I mean, I would love to, I actually prosecuted a lot of people involved in drug dealing, and there were no crack addicts that I knew of that were fabulously wealthy. And, but the media should ask that question, because nobody would go into business with this guy legitimately with all of these problems he has just hanging around.
Yes. And this idea that the right is advancing conspiracy theories here is undermined by the fact that we have plenty of evidence of an actual conspiracy to protect the Bidens. I mean, look at the IRS whistleblowers came out ahead of that sweetheart plea deal falling apart, and they revealed that there's an extensive effort within the federal government to protect the Bidens from meaningful scrutiny, and that the statute of limitations has routinely run out on some of the most serious charges that implicated Joe Biden in the family's business affairs, Jonathan Fahey. So we've got screaming leads here that the media, if they were serious, would actually dig into.
Exactly. And there actually was a conspiracy here between the media and the Democratic Party and the Biden campaign to delegitimize this laptop 4 years ago. That really was a conspiracy to keep information out of the hands of voters so they could make a decision at the ballot box, which, either go to the current or the recent Trump prosecution. That seemed to be a big deal to them. But it's just amazing listening to the media, because they are so incurious. And even the charges they have against Hunter Biden, they stay very clear of anything that implicates Joe Biden. It's the tax charges, which are easy to prove. He just didn't, he evaded his filing taxes, and then the gun charge. But they never get into, like, where did the money come from? What are all these shell companies?
Yeah.
What's actually going on here? Why aren't we asking some questions as to why is this family so wealthy? Like, what are they doing? Maybe they're exceptionally talented in some business, but it's funny how we never hear about what they actually do. Most people I know that are quite successful, if you ask them what they do for a living, they could at least explain it somewhat coherently, and you would think that somebody would be able to put this out there. But it's very interesting that people from foreign countries want to just, give them so much money, millions and millions of dollars, and no one can explain what they do for it.
Yeah, and today, so the media is reckoning with the reality that the laptop has been once again completely authenticated. In fact, even the Biden administration's Justice Department saying, yeah, it's legitimate, the contents of that laptop. The New York Times has a piece today trying to spin all of this. Their headline is Hunter Biden's laptop, revealed by New York Post, comes back to haunt him. They claim 3 paragraphs into this piece, Jonathan Fahey, that, quote, many of the claims made by the New York Post in its coverage of the laptop, in which the publication sought to link President Biden to corrupt business dealings, have not been proved, they say. But the laptop had enough incriminating evidence to continue to haunt Hunter Biden. So the new frame, as I understand it, Jonathan, is, yeah, the laptop's real, but you really can't trust it.
Yeah, isn't that always the thing? Like, oh, this isn't true, and then once it's proven to be true, it doesn't matter anyway, right? Like that game, right? And now we just move on. It's old news type of thing. Yeah, it's amazing to me how the media and, the mainstream media, and how bad they are, but it's funny how, easily, they're susceptible to censorship and things like that. They all went along with this. There was no one pushing back. It's just like with COVID, it's like our media doesn't, if the Democratic Party wants to kill a story, they're all in line. They don't even ask a single question. Yeah, and so the reason no corruption's been revealed maybe is because the media doesn't ask any follow-up questions.
Well, there's also the piece. There's also the reality that the New York Times has proven itself through the years to be a willing handmaiden of the intelligence community, including when it's advancing lies to the American people. So we've got, even this week, the 51 intelligence officials who all signed off on that dishonest letter saying that Hunter Biden's laptop was likely Russian disinformation. They're all sticking to their guns. They're saying, oh, no, we're not backing off of this. Fox chased them all down, asked them, and they all claim they're going to the extent that any of them communicated, they're all going to stick with this. But places like the New York Times, they carry water for these people who are demonstrated liars and who have routinely misled the American public.
Yeah, exactly. They've been completely discredited, and you would think they would at least have a day of accountability on the media or something to say, hey, you got this wrong. How did you get it wrong? What were you thinking? But instead, it's like they're happy about it because their point wasn't to get something right. Their purpose was to help the Biden campaign. And so they achieved what they wanted to do. And we'll wait as this election gets closer, the stories they'll try to kill and all these things. And we're going to see it again and again. And it'll be, they just say Russian and everyone's supposed to just, fall in line. And it's just so disgraceful and so dishonest. And it's embarrassing for our country to have a media like this.
Jonathan Fahey, I also want to talk to you about something you know quite a bit about. You're, as a former acting ICE director, we have this headline in the last 24 hours that 8 suspected terrorists with possible ISIS ties, this is NBC's headline, have been arrested in New York, L.A., and Philadelphia. They say that these men all came in over the course of the last year and a half, and they were vetted. They came across our southern border. They were vetted by the Biden administration, released into the country, only for later the Biden administration to reconsider and say, well, wait a second, these guys may be tied up with ISIS, and they've since arrested them. What's your reaction to this news?
It's really not surprising. I mean, the specifics, I guess, maybe are surprising, but it's not surprising at all that terrorists are coming across our border that want to harm us. And this administration, with their open borders policy, they've decided that this is an acceptable risk to the American people. They'd rather have open borders with a higher risk of terrorism than the alternative. And we have risks of public safety, fentanyl, all of these things are acceptable risks because they want to have as many illegal aliens as possible. And I read part of their press release where they're talking about, we're going to, DHS and the FBI are working round the clock to, on terrorism stuff. And it's like, well, why don't they just close the border and stop people from coming? And then they don't even have to work around the clock and we'd all be safer. But it's just such utter nonsense that they invite people in, they encourage them to come, they provide them benefits when they're here, and then act like they're trying to keep the American people safe. It's like, well, we know how to keep them safe or safer than they are, and they are unwilling to do that for cynical political purposes. And everyone knows they're doing it other than maybe a small segment in the middle, but everyone knows exactly what they're doing.
Right. And as I mentioned to Todd Bensman earlier, the idea that the FBI is working around the clock on this issue is belied by the fact that the National Security Division, which is in charge of this particular problem, terrorists coming into our country, has been focused on prosecuting more January 6 protesters. So they're not actually focused full time on this. They're focused on political garbage at our expense.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, whenever they're like, "Oh, we're never going to rest" or anything, it's like, "Okay, here we go," right? But yeah, the January 6th cases, we had the teachers, a few years ago, or the school boards where they tried to intimidate people from speaking out at school board meetings. They spent a lot of effort on things like that and a lot of other politically motivated types of prosecutions, or at least arguably so, abortion protesters and things like that. So to the extent this is a priority, they're certainly not treating it like it is, and they could be doing a whole heck of a lot more. But they should be honest with the American people that they're not going to stop letting people in. Maybe once they get here, they'll try to catch them, but they're not going to prevent them from coming here, which would make us a whole heck of a lot safer. And everyone knows that if they want to harm our country, if they're in a foreign country, it's so easy to get here. You could come here, falsely claim asylum, or just be one of the known gotaways, which who knows who those people are. And that's probably the really scary thing. And this administration won't do a single thing about it. And it's terrible.
And it sounds like the vetting process at this point is nothing more than a pinky promise. You're not a terrorist, right? No. And then you're let into the country. Is that about it?
It would seem like it. Who knows what it is? But I'm sure it's a few perfunctory questions, and they're probably on the politically correct side too, right? You go in. Do you hate America? Sure. You come on in. That type of thing. But I can't imagine the vetting is anything other than sort of an honor system that you're here to not do any harm, and you really have a legitimate claim. But again, that's not vetting. That's just that's a little game they're playing to act like they're doing something for our security. Why not just stop them from coming? That would make a lot of people safer and a lot more people happy. And also, we could provide a lot more services for American citizens than we do to the illegal aliens that we do now. But they're not the least bit serious. They're going to pretend to be serious for the next 4 or 5 months. They'll probably have a few more of these types of announcements. But if Biden's reelected, the border is going to be even more wide open than it's ever been, and it's just going to be a massive push for amnesty. And we all know that that's the game here. And they more or less say it when they're pinned down on it.
Well, they have to, so because take them at their word when they say that it is outrageous that we would deport illegal immigrants. What they're saying in the inverse is that the only plan is to give them amnesty.
Exactly. They say, yeah, that's not who we are as a country. All of those little cliches. So basically, deporting people is inhumane. ICE is an inhumane organization. The agents are, and all the people that come here illegally are contributing greater to the country than American citizens are. Therefore, they should get greater benefits. Yeah, it's so disgraceful. It's so insulting to the intelligence of the American people. This game they play that if you don't agree with open borders, you're racist, you're xenophobic. That's the game, to try to get everything into that lane to make it a race thing or something, so they could intimidate people from talking about it, for being honest about it, from looking at the pros and the cons of it. And they're going to, what they're doing now, we all know they're not really trying to be serious. But come November, if they win, the border is, there's no border.
The real bigotry is hating your own people so much that you allow other foreign nationals to take their country. That's the real bigotry here. Jonathan Fahey, thank you very much. Good to have you with us today, sir.